Whenever we're getting close to a new season of Delta Force, I like to just release a wish list of certain features that I'd like to see improved or things that I want to see worked on in Delta Force, just as a way to track how the game has been progressing throughout the years, and hopefully maybe give the devs as well some insight as to how the general player base is feeling about the game, and obviously myself. So this is very much going to be a talking head video, so you can listen without actually watching. The footage in the background is mostly just B-roll of various clips that I've recorded throughout my thousands of hours in Delta Force. So the first point, and I don't think this will come as a shock to anyone, is actually working on the vehicle versus infantry balance. Now, this is not a very easy issue to fix. There are so many things that they have to take into consideration, the different game modes, especially like VU, AD, King of the Hill. I think King of the Hill is probably the biggest outlier in terms of poor vehicle versus infantry balance, for the simple fact that there's just so many vehicles. And I actually made a video, I think almost a month ago now, called The Vehicle Problem, and I gave some possible solutions that they could explore, but obviously all this needs to be tested. But considering, that they have the opportunity to test it even for like a couple of days to see how it feels for the players and then gather feedback from that, I think would be a great step in the right direction for them to at least start trying stuff, not necessarily make permanent changes right off the rip, but at least trying certain things that maybe there's a couple of numbers that they can tweak on the back end, allowing us to try maybe a map with maybe fewer vehicles or more tailored vehicles and stuff like that. But yeah, vehicle versus infantry balance feels very bad, especially on King of the Hill, albeit it's the least played game mode out of the two, so AD being the most played one. But I think a lot of people play AD for a couple of reasons. The first one being it's a lot more action-packed, there's a lot less downtime, and the second one, there's a lot less vehicles on AD as opposed to King of the Hill. But I think that if they fixed some of those issues, maybe more people would play King of the Hill. But then again, you can tell me in the comment section down below. But I did create a poll the other day just asking people what they want the devs to actually work on the most aside from content, and a resounding amount of you mentioned the poor vehicle versus infantry balance in the game. So I really hope that they start looking at this. They mentioned they were working on it during the dev stream from before last season started, so I'm curious to see if we'll have any of those changes in our hands when the new season drops on April 21st, I want to say. The next one, and this is a recurring one as well, is the audio in the game. Now, the positional audio overall is pretty good on most maps. Some of the maps that have more verticality, it's a little bit tougher to pinpoint where people are. One being just top of mind is Knife Edge. I find it's very difficult often to pinpoint whether somebody is below you or above you. That's just, issues I think with how positional audio works on that map due to the verticality of it. But overall, just the balance of different sounds in the game is sometimes just completely out of whack. If you have a jet flying over you, now I recognize a jet should be loud, but good God, is it absolutely deafening. And in certain situations, there are so many sounds playing at any given moment that certain pieces of audio get cut out, which you don't hear footsteps sometimes, you don't hear gunshot audio. A tank can be driving behind you, but there's so many other sounds happening at the same time that it doesn't even produce audio on your end. So there definitely needs to be some work in regards to audio in Delta Force. The distance at which you hear certain audio cues, maybe at a certain point they need to be completely cut out because sometimes there's just too much happening and there's not enough bandwidth in terms of audio for you to be able to hear everything. Now, obviously, I'm not an audio engineer, but I do like to have, I think I have a pretty good ear for audio cues and stuff like that, and I have a pretty good audio setup as well. And there's nothing more frustrating than being killed by someone that produced no audio cues whatsoever. It's so important to the overall nature of a first-person shooter, and just the overall levels of different audio cues in the game I feel is all over the place a lot of the time. So yeah, maybe a little bit more attention to that would be very, very welcome. The next, and I've touched on this as well, maybe not as much, but I feel as the seasons progress, the performance of the game is getting progressively worse. Now, obviously, one of the big points that I want to make with this is the game will be migrating to UE5 sooner rather than later. So I would imagine a lot of the things that I'm talking about in these wishlist videos might be addressed when the UE5 version launches and when the game is migrated over to Unreal Engine 5. So I have a creeping feeling that a lot of the things that they're wanting or that might already be done will only be seen once UE5 launches and gets released, because they don't want to put all that much investment into a game version that will be deprecated shortly. So potentially the performance improvements that I have been, or the performance degradation that I have been experiencing, and I know a lot of other people have been experiencing, will be a lot better when UE5 launches, but it could be a lot worse because there's a lot of features that are in Unreal Engine 5 that people use, like Lumen and stuff like that, that are very, very hard to optimize, and you need a lot of resources and a lot of know-how to actually make those features performant. So hopefully when the game migrates to UE5, we might see some performance improvements through and through, and maybe a lot of the stuff they've been working on behind the scenes will be visible when that new game version launches. But still, performance improvements I think are required. I've been getting a lot of instances where I'm dropping down to the double-digit frames, and it's really frustrating having those hard freezes, basically hard freezes when you're in the middle of a firefight. And if you've been having any performance issues, I would be curious to hear your thoughts as well in the comment section down below. The next one that I don't really think I've spoken about in the past, maybe in the vehicle problem video, is just giving some love for King of the Hill. Now, King of the Hill is my favorite game mode in Delta Force. I like the give and take of the team having to really think about which objective they're pushing. Maybe you have to go back and defend a past objective, like your gimme flags that are close to your uncapped, to prevent them from getting a pincer move on you in the middle or something like that. I really like the give and take of people moving and flowing through the map and going back to objectives behind them to fight over them. And I prefer that over just fighting over a specific set of flags. Like in AD, it's very scripted. I feel you're always fighting against like one specific flag, and there's a lot less room for interesting gameplay, in my opinion. That's all subjective. I know a lot of people like AD, but I think King of the Hill is the more interesting game mode out of the two. And there could definitely be some love given to King of the Hill to make the game mode even more interesting. Like overall, reduce the vehicle count on most King of the Hill maps, I think, is a given. But instead of having just all the flags be just flags, give them a tactical advantage. Give the flag a tactical advantage. And I've brought this up before, but on Ascension, before the game like released into open beta, which is what they call it now, there used to be the attack chopper associated to the C2 flag, which is on the hill in the middle of the map. No team had an attack chopper. If you wanted to do the attack chopper, you had to capture C2. And a lot of games in the past, like the older Battlefield titles, also did this, where capturing a specific flag on the map gave you a strategic advantage. And it made the gameplay a lot more interesting because those objectives, you want to fight over them because of the strategic advantage that they offer, as opposed to all the flags basically having nothing. Or some maps have certain vehicles that spawn on flags, but it's on both sides, right? So on Ascension, you get an IFV if you capture A, and you get an IFV if you capture F. So both teams have that as their gimme flag that are closest to their uncap. But I think having a single flag where both teams fight over it to have that strategic advantage would be a lot more interesting. You could even do this with like the guided missile. Oh, well, you can only call in a guided missile if you have this strategic objective on the map captured at any given time. I think that would just make the game mode much more interesting and much more tactical in terms of which objectives you're actively fighting over. Yeah, so just some improvements for King of the Hill. That's just one of the various ideas that I have, but I think King of the Hill is a somewhat undercooked mode, and there's a lot more that they could do with it to make it interesting for people to play. And the last one, but I want to keep this video short, is a working squad system in Warfare, and not only Victory Unite. So they have the basic skeleton of a squad system. Like if you look and you're playing Warfare, there's a squad leader that has a different contextual menu, allowing them to ask for like a beacon somewhere or supplies or stuff like that. But that's pretty much where the squad system ends. You can put a squad order on a flag, but just tell me the last time that you noticed a squad leader giving a squad order in like King of the Hill or AD, and that you actually went to that specific objective. Probably never. I don't even think it actually notifies you that the squad leader gave an order. It's just a very underutilized system. You have the basics of a squad system, but there's nothing other than that. You can't even manage your squad. You can't even change squads, which is somewhat frustrating. Sometimes you'll get put into a match and you're in a squad by yourself while another squad is like only 3 players. Well, you could graft yourself to that squad and then have a full squad of 4. But there's just it's so undercooked as a feature in Delta Force that it drives me insane at how everything is pretty much there. They just need to code in some more ways to actively utilize that squad feature of, oh, well, the squad leader gave an objective order. If we all push that, we all get more points. It would make the game much more enjoyable, and hopefully would make people coordinate a lot more because you're getting more points for attacking a certain objective, or it allows you to gather more points for call-ins. It would also be interesting for the squad leader to only be able to call in certain call-ins with the contextual menu for that, as opposed to just anyone and everyone being able to call in like a guided missile. Now, this would all require some testing to see if it's balanced or not, but I think a more fleshed out squad system would do the game a world of change and would make it way more interesting to actually work as a unit and be able to coordinate even with random players, because right now I think the biggest problem with Delta Force is the fact that everybody's playing a lone wolf game. Rarely do you see people coordinating and working together. You'll have the odd engineer repair vehicle every now and then, but unless you're playing with like a pre-made squad, most of the time people are just doing their own thing. And even when you're playing with a pre-made squad and you're in Discord with them, if you're playing King of the Hill, a lot of the time people are just doing whatever they want anyways. There's just a distinct lack of objective team play in the game, and it doesn't really reward you all that much for doing team-based actions. So I really want the game to kind of like move into that realm as opposed to how we have it right now. Now, obviously, there's some more things that I would put on the wish list here, but they have been making good strides on certain things like the UI in the game. They did some improvements to that last season, which I really appreciate, and I did notice. So great job on that. But yeah, overall, this would be the ones that I think would be the most interesting to me in terms of improvements and optimizations and stuff like that, and balance. I would be curious to see what your wish list is in the comment section down below. But yeah, that'll be it for today's video. I've rambled on for long enough. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.